To really understand it, you need to sort of go back and look at the history of Eureka Springs, which started just a couple of years before the hotel did. 1879, there was nobody here, and then a spring was discovered, an ancient Indian healing spring, rediscovered. And then within a few months, there were 15,000 people here. And it became internationally famous right away as the miracle city in the wilderness, and people just flocked here to take the waters. And then a couple of years later, a fellow came along, his name is Powell Clayton. He's the first governor of Arkansas after the war between the states. And so he came to Eureka Springs, saw the chaos that was here, and somehow had the vision to imagine it as a health resort, an upscale health resort. It was largely to accommodate his associates and political friends. And when it was built, it was the fanciest hotel west of the Mississippi. And the town kind of organized around the Crescent Hotel. And Powell Clayton was the man who was responsible. He didn't do it single-handedly, of course. He had a lot of influential friends, but he was the one with the vision to start it all off. Around the turn of the century, the hotel started getting financial troubles, and the way they solved them was by, beginning in 1908, for the school year, 9 months of the school year, they devoted the building to Crescent College and Conservatory for Young Women. That went on until 1934 with a break towards the end of the 20s. And what we're discovering is that the kind of education that they got here was probably as good as a woman could get anywhere in this country at the time. He was from Muscatine, Iowa. He came here in 1937. At that time, the school had been closed for 3 years, and this building just sat empty. This is during the Depression. Norman Baker was, I would call him a twisted genius. He was a brilliant, brilliant man, highly accomplished in many, many different areas, made several fortunes in several different activities. And then he discovered quack medicine. And he claimed that he had a cure for cancer. So he came here, he filled this place up. He was a flamboyant individual. He was very much into the color purple, and he painted large parts of this hotel purple. All that's left now is the chimney stacks. He didn't cure anybody, or if we did, we never heard anything about it. What he would do is just wait until they ran out of money and then say, sorry, I can't do anything else for you, and send them home, pretty much. Or they would die here. To the credit of the town, it was here he got busted. They charged him with mail fraud. So then the hotel sat empty for the next 6 years. And when it reopened again, it was bought by a group of businessmen from Chicago, and they had big connections with the mob. And so for the next 10 years, Eureka Springs became known as Little Chicago. And the town was pretty wild and pretty open. You were not allowed to have drinks over the counter, but they had that going on. And eventually in about 55, I think both hotels got busted and closed down temporarily and then sold to new people. And after that, we went through a series of owners. It seemed like it changed owners about every year. A lot of people come in, they try and make it work again as a conventional hotel. Nothing seemed to work until 1997, when two people from Connecticut came here. They were Marty and Elise Rennick. They came here, they were preservationists. First of all, they looked at the Basin Park and they fell in love with that and bought it and were going to move into it. And then the guy who was managing it at the time said, you should look at the Crescent Hotel, which at the time was sitting empty. But the Rennicks saw this, fell even deeper in love with the Crescent Hotel, bought this and decided to live here in the Crescent.
One was a man who was a construction worker who fell during the construction of the place into a room and died, and I think they call it Michael's room. The other story was of a young girl who was going to the school at the time. She was either pushed or jumped off a balcony, and so her spirit is remaining there.
I think most of the ghost stories that we have here are from the period of time when Norman Baker was here. He was actually only here for 22 months. First 6 months of that was spent fixing the place up, and after that the place was filled with terminal cancer patients. There's one immediately beneath the penthouse that he lived in is room 419, which is on the far end of this hallway here, and that's Theodora's room. We believe that a person who lived there during the Baker period was his head nurse, or maybe chief of staff, something like that, but her name was, as far as has come down to us, was Theodora. What people see is a little lady of advanced age, a little bewildered, standing outside her door, fumbling in her purse. And several accounts from different decades have said that she's been approached and said, "Are you okay?" And her response is always, "I'm fine, I'm just looking for my keys." And then the person goes away, looks back, and she isn't there anymore. Immediately below that, so at that end of the building, you have a lot of activity. You have Baker's apartment, which has its own kind of atmosphere. There's not a lot of activity reported there, but what we do here is, I know on several occasions when people moved into the room, didn't know anything about it being a haunted hotel, didn't know anything about Baker, but they had to leave. They couldn't stand it.
And I just felt this, it's hard to explain. It almost felt like I was being kind of attacked, like my heart was racing, and I got him up, and I was like, man, my heart's going 90 to nothing. I checked my pulse, and I think it was like 90.
So then immediately below that is Theodora's room. Immediately below that is room 3500, which is actually at the end of a hallway into an annex. People will hear the sound of a squeaking wheel outside the room. They'll open the door, they look out, and they'll glimpse a lady in an old-fashioned nurse's uniform pushing a gurney with somebody on it under a sheet along the hallway to the end, and then she turns a corner and she's gone.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we come here. It's fun, and we like to tell other guests about our experiences. They're always wanting to know, oh, have you seen anything here? We've taken lots of pictures. We'd get orbs and some shadows. It's a little bit thrilling. I don't want to be scared like I was in 502, but it's fun to talk about.
The whole town was put on the what is it they call it? The historic sites in 1970. But just recently, I think last year, it was added. This hotel was added to the list of historic hotels in the country.